You always make things harder than they need to be, Lena. That's why no one trusts you with the big stuff." That's what he said, like it was a fact, not a wound. And maybe for years I believed it. But this story isn't about him. It's about the quiet ones who stay, who give, who are overlooked until one day they aren't. And when the truth finally cracks through, well, it doesn't shout. It glows. Before we dive in, let me know. What time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The clinking of silverware against porcelain mingled with soft jazz drifting through the haze of candlelight. I sat at the head of the long table tucked into the corner of that Italian restaurant on Columbus Avenue. Exposed brick walls shimmered gold from pendant lamps, and laughter swelled like a tide between relatives, leaning into wine glasses, trading memories and toasts. Supposedly, this was my celebration, my master's degree, my name on the program, my night. I folded my napkin 3 times. Then Jared arrived. He swept in 10 minutes late somehow, making it look deliberate. Navy suit, tailored sharp, a silver watch catching the light shoulders loose, as if he hadn't just sprinted across 3 subway stops. The noise at the table rose instantly. Chairs scraped back. Someone clapped him on the shoulder, and Uncle Ray boomed the man of the hour, though it wasn't his hour. "He always takes care of his folks," Aunt Mara said, lifting her glass. "Not like some kids these days." Water slid down my throat too fast. "He's been sending money every month," another voice chimed in. Such a responsible young man. I stayed quiet, smiled the way I'd trained myself to smile, small, dismissible. My cheeks stung from it. Then my mother tilted her head toward me. Her tone sliced through the room, casual yet edged like vinegar. "And Lena, well, she's too busy with her fancy life to check in, let alone help out. You know how it is." The table chuckled, not cruelly, just comfortably. My chest tightened. Fingers chilled beneath the napkin I'd folded and refolded. I watched her for a long moment. She didn't look back. I stood. The chair scraped against wood, startling a few heads in my direction. My hands moved fast, deliberate, no shaking. As I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, tapped into my banking app. My voice came steadier than I expected. Since Jared's taking such good care of everything, he can keep doing it. "I won't send another dime." I turned the screen outward. A list of transfers glowed exact and clean, each note the same. For parents. For parents. For parents. No one spoke. My mother blinked. Jared stayed frozen eyes darting toward the screen. His jaw tightened. A linen napkin crumpled in his fist into something shapeless. The nearest candle guttered inside its glass holder. My shoes struck the pavement hard each step, pulling me farther from the restaurant lights. I cut across Columbus, the cold air scraping my throat past storefronts, where couples leaned against counters with gelato cups and cocktails. Their laughter spilled into the street, bright and careless. Shoulders tight, I kept walking as if distance alone could mute the snap still rattling inside me. My apartment in San Francisco waited on the other coast, though my body didn't feel like it belonged anywhere. A few days later, I landed back there, dragging my suitcase across the cracked hallway tiles. The moment the door shut behind me, I kicked off my shoes, let my coat slump to the floor, and sank beside the bed. I didn't flip on the main light. The desk lamp's muted glow spilled across the wood, same as it had in every place I'd lived. That lamp had followed me through 4 moves, 1 eviction, and a broken lease. I'd built it when I was 10 from busted flashlight parts and scraps my dad brought home from the plant plastic shards, tangled wire, and old bulb he thought might still work. I soldered it together with a pen-style iron I wasn't supposed to touch alone. The base leaned slightly uneven, but the first time it came alive under my fingers, I swore it was magic. That Christmas, I wrapped it in tissue paper and ribbon and handed it to my mom. She opened it, gave it a glance, then set it aside. "You should be out singing carols," she said, "not stuck with wires like some lonely boy in a garage." I smiled anyway, because that's what good daughters do. Later, I found it in the trash. The next morning, though, it had vanished. Weeks later, I spotted it glowing in the corner of my dad's workbench, steady as a secret. He never mentioned it. That memory clung to me now as I sat cross-legged on the floor, knees tucked tight, the same lamp warming the room. I wondered if it would ever burn out, or if it was just stubborn like me. My phone buzzed. I let it ring twice before flipping it over. Silas. At first he didn't speak, just turned his camera toward his desk. A small cactus sat in a clay pot, plump, a little crooked. A bruise marked one side, a spine broken. "It's still alive," he said, even though I forgot to water it. For 3 weeks. My lips twitched. Almost a smile. "I figured you'd appreciate that," he added. "You always said cacti were survivors." I nodded faintly. He didn't press. That was Silas, comfortable in silence, never rushing it. After we hung up, I tugged open the drawer under my bed. It resisted, nearly tipping forward, but I pulled free the folder buried in the back. Screenshots, receipts, transfer logs. I hadn't wanted to face them tonight. But the quiet made them pulse insistent. Page after page, each stamped with the same note for parents. Sometimes $2,000. Sometimes $2,500 scraped together by skipping groceries or stretching freelance checks. One memory hit sharp shoes, split at the seams, duct taped from the inside for months. A joke at work. I laughed along. Once I asked Mom if Dad needed more for his medication. She said Jared had already handled it. So thoughtful, she called him. Always planning ahead. I nodded, as if it were true. The thing is, I never hated Jared. He'd been the golden one, loud, magnetic, the boy who filled every room without trying. I'd followed him around like a shadow. He didn't mind. Not then. But his shadow grew, and I stayed behind it. When I got into the University of Washington, I held the news for 3 days. I couldn't bear to hear the inevitable. What about Jared? My thumb drifted over the lamp's base, pausing on a chipped spot, patched years ago with epoxy. Flawed but strong. Some things don't need perfection to keep working. On my phone, the cactus photo lingered its clay pot, carrying its own faint crack. 2 taps, and the image remained. Beside me, the pot on my floor showed a hairline curve of its own. I pressed it lightly. It held. The bell above the cafe door chimed as I pushed it open, the sound sharp against the low hiss of the espresso machine. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag while I slid into the booth by the window. The initials carved into the wood scraped beneath my touch. I leaned back, coat bunching under me, listening to the tired machine sigh with every order. Sophomore year was when things started to unravel, though I didn't recognize it then. I just added a 3rd job editing audio clips for an online language course, on top of opening shifts here and tutoring high school seniors who rolled their eyes when I corrected their grammar. Most mornings began at 4:30. I brewed coffee, caught 2 buses to class, then circled back to study until closing. Some nights, I dozed right here, cheek pressed to the table's varnish. I can still hear my own voice from one morning trembling, though I blame the cold. I just need a little help. $200. It's for textbooks. I can send you the list. Mom didn't pause. Honey, Jared needs that money right now. He's so close to launching his startup, and we promised to support him through this phase. You know he's got that big investor meeting. Besides, you're the smart one. You'll figure it out like always. She said it softly, as if it were the most natural answer in the world. I stared at my phone after the call, gripping it so tightly, my fingers ached. No tears came. I simply stood clocked in and handed an extra espresso shot to the next customer as though nothing had cracked inside me. That week, groceries never made it into my bag. I ate saltines smeared with mustard packets stolen from the cafeteria. I doubled up on hoodies rather than turn on the heat. My boots split at the sole, so I lined them with plastic bags to keep my socks dry. And still, that Friday, I wired $2,000 to my parents' account, scraped together from freelance jobs, and skipped meals. I added a note for parents. Utilities, meds, anything. Part of me hoped they'd notice. Jared never said a word. I don't know if he even saw it. A few days later, hunched over my cracked phone, I scrolled through Facebook trying to distract myself from a pounding headache. The app froze, then flickered back to life with a photo. Dad sat smiling at the dining table. A cake gleamed in front of him, thick chocolate frosting, gold letters, spelling "Happy Birthday, Dad." A bottle of Cabernet, his favorite, rested beside him. A new wool scarf hung neatly over the back of his chair. Mom's caption, "Thank you to our wonderful son Jared for planning this lovely evening. He always makes sure his family is taken care of. We're so proud of you, sweetheart." My thumb hovered over the heart icon as if pressing it might make the lie less sharp. The hollow in my chest widened, scooped clean. Anger didn't even surface, just erasure. That cake, I'd bought it. The wine, the heating bill that kept the kitchen warm enough for the photo's glow, I'd paid for all of it. And still not a single mention of me. Around me, the cafe hummed. A name called out by the barista. A couple laughing. A spoon clinking against ceramic. Each sound muffled, blurred into static. I stared at the screen until my eyes stung. The caption didn't change. My name stayed absent. I almost texted Silas. He would have known what to do. Or maybe he wouldn't have said anything, just sent another photo of that battered cactus on his sill, the one that had gone 3 weeks without water and still managed to live. Instead, I flipped my phone over, pressing its screen down on the table. Breath fogged the window beside me, so I traced a circle into the condensation. It vanished instantly. Headlights swept past, distorting my reflection on the glass, warped, blurred, almost unrecognizable. My forehead rested against the cool pain eyes half closed, while the espresso machine hissed and the hollow inside me stretched wider. The vending machine hummed against the silence of the floor. Overhead, fluorescents buzzed faintly, throwing tired shadows across stainless steel counters in the deserted kitchen. Silas sat opposite me at the high table, sleeves, rolled up steam rising from his ramen cup. My own foam container gave off the faint tang of artificial shrimp, though neither of us cared about the taste. "Dinner of champions," he muttered, snapping his chopsticks apart. Damp curls framed his forehead, still unruly from the rain. "I think mine expired last year," I replied, nudging a limp noodle along the rim. "That just adds character," he deadpanned. "Danger is the secret ingredient." A breath escaped me that almost counted as a laugh. Outside, the storm lashed harder, rain streaking down the windows and pooling into dark ribbons along the glass. The rest of the office glowed faintly from sleeping monitors, blue light flickering across empty desks. Silas leaned back, gaze drifting between me and the storm. "You know," he began, voice lower, "my sister spent 4 years sending money so my parents could pay off their house. Never once complained, just wired it when they asked." I waited. Turns out, he went on half of it. Went straight to my cousin Ethan, the one with the real estate vision who still lives in somebody's basement. I blinked. The one who built that app to track gas station bathrooms? Yeah, that Ethan. He stabbed his noodles chewed, then added she found out by accident. Mom slipped while bragging about how he was finally finding his path. What did she do? She didn't fight, didn't even raise her voice, just stopped. No more transfers, no arguments. But she's never looked at Mom the same way again. His tone deepened. Some wounds don't bleed, but you feel them corroding from the inside. The words lingered heavy, refusing to dissolve into the hum of the fridge or the occasional crack of thunder outside. I lowered my eyes to the bright orange broth swirling in the cup. No reply formed, just a faint nod, shallow, almost involuntary. We finished in silence. Not the heavy kind Silas never made, silence suffocate. He had a way of leaving room for thought without filling it with noise. Eventually he stretched, gave a half salute, and disappeared down the hallway toward his desk. I stayed longer, empty cup, warming my palms even after the broth was gone. When I finally went home, I didn't reach for the TV or music. I opened my laptop instead, fingers hovering over the keys before I logged into my banking history. Scrolling began, line after line, every transfer, every note, 8 years, $54,230. The figures glared back like proof of invisible labor, midnight contracts, skipped groceries, doctor visits, postponed shoes, worn down to nothing. Not once had I missed a payment. Every entry carried the same 3 words for parents. My throat tightened, not from grief, not even anger, but the weight of recognition. This had been festering for years, unnamed until now. I opened my inbox, sifted through neglected chains, receipts, updates, family photos. Then I saw it. A thread marked insurance stuff, keep on file. Attached a hospital invoice dated 3 years earlier, a scanned PDF, and on its corner a note in my mother's handwriting. Thankfully, Jared stepped up in time for your dad's medication. Don't know what we'd do without him. The transfer glared from my records. $2,000, labeled for meds. That same week, I had lived on instant oatmeal, and the gratitude had gone to Jared. Not once had they acknowledged me. The air in the room grew colder, though no window was open. Pale light from the laptop washed over my face, unflinching, harsh. I sat motionless, drained beyond blinking. Blankness spread wider than rage, heavier than shock. Leaning back against the couch, I let the glow press into me like a weight I couldn't put down. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I stepped out of the cab, the cold cutting through my coat like it hadn't missed me at all. The house stood the same as always, brown shutters, a wreath sagging on the door strings of lights drooping too low. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, promising a warmth I'd never really felt inside those walls. My hand lifted toward the bell out of habit, but the door swung open first. Lena. My mother beamed lipstick to red sequined sweater, throwing off the porch light. Come in, don't just stand there, freezing. She drew me inside with fluttering arms, her perfume wrapping around me, cloying and floral. The scent of cinnamon and pine greeted me next. In the corner, the tree blinked in perfect rhythm, surrounded by boxes glinting in metallic paper. I was still unwrapping my scarf when laughter drifted from the living room. Everyone had already started on the presents. Jared's name dominated the tags. From Jared, wow, gorgeous. He has such taste. Aunt Camille lifted a designer handbag high, while my mother angled her wrist so her new gold watch caught the light. My father sat proud in his recliner, draped in a cashmere trench. He raised a glass with mock grandeur. That boy knows how to show he cares. Then the words landed like pebbles in still water. Not like some people who only show up when it's convenient. The corners of my mouth tilted, but not into a smile. My grip tightened around the plain paper bag, the one holding blood pressure pills, multivitamins, and wool socks I thought he'd appreciate. Neatly wrapped, yet suddenly embarrassingly small. Mom finally turned toward me as if noticing my presence for the first time. Did you bring anything dear? I didn't see your name on any of the boxes. Murmuring something about traffic, I handed the bag over and slipped into the hallway. The air felt stifling my sweater, clinging uncomfortably. My steps carried me to Dad's study. The door creaked as it swung open. Nothing much had changed. Bookshelves sagged under paperbacks. The old armchair rested by the window. Yellowing newspapers still towered in their stacks. But on the desk sat the lamp I'd built at 10. Its neck crooked its shade. Uneven paint chipped along one corner. Still glowing, throwing out that soft orange light. I moved closer, fingertips brushing the base. He had never praised it, never mentioned it, but he hadn't removed it either. That was something. A shoe scraped behind me. You really came. Jared's voice broke the quiet. Didn't think the valley would let you off the hook. I turned. He leaned against the doorway sweater, too perfect smile, bordering smug. I needed a break, I answered flatly. He nodded. Good. Honestly, Lena, I was starting to worry. You were always the intense one. I said nothing. He stepped into the room, giving a casual glance around. It's great that you're working now, really. But you know how it is. Parents need someone who can actually provide. Not just play engineer. The words landed light, almost teasing, like we were still children trading jabs across the dinner table. But the sting was sharp. I've been providing, I said softly. His laugh was quick, dismissive. Sure, in spirit. and suddenly the room tilted. The tree, the gifts, the laughter all blurred into a low buzzing in my head. The lamp shone steadily, the one object in the house never replaced, never overshadowed. Its glow brushed my cheek, caught in the mirror's edge. Jared kept talking business trips, client stock options. His voice filled the room while mine stayed absent. I pressed back against the wall, fists tightening around my coat. The bulb flickered shadows sliding across the desk. I stood there unmoving, letting his words clatter through the silence. By morning, the cold bit at my cheeks as I steadied my father along the park path near our old neighborhood. His cane tapped a measured rhythm breath, lifting in short clouds. The pale sun hovered above the bare trees' shadows, stretching thin across the frosted ground. "I still like this place," he murmured, leaning into my arm. "Your mom and I used to bring you both here in strollers. Jared always ran ahead. You liked collecting rocks." A faint smile tugged at me. "I still have some of them." He chuckled. "You always said they were fossils. Maybe they were." We passed the duck pond, frozen at the edges, reeds brittle and brown, two pigeons pecking half-heartedly at stale crumbs. I led him toward the bench under the willow tree, its limbs stark and bare now. Dad lowered himself slowly, wincing as he settled. "How have you been feeling lately?" I asked, watching his gloved hands rest against his lap. Better, he exhaled through his nose. "The meds help, and Dr. Benton said it was good I got in early this time. Didn't even have to wait long. Early." My brow lifted. "How'd you manage that? Appointments are usually backed up." He shrugged. "Not sure. Maybe Jared arranged something. You know how he is." I nodded, my mind circling. "Has he given you any cash lately?" "For co-pays groceries." Dad opened his mouth, then hesitated. His fingers scratched at his temple. "I don't think so. But your mom handles all that. Maybe he gave it to her and she passed it along. She said he's been wiring money." I kept my tone neutral. "Has she ever shown you the transfers?" He frowned, then chuckled softly. "No, but I trust her. She wouldn't lie." I didn't press further. He was tired and I didn't want to plant doubts he couldn't shoulder. Still, something cracked inside me, a hairline fracture where trust had always sat firm. We lingered a while watching a dog chase a stick, nearly its own size, its tail spinning. Later, I walked him home, helped him into his chair, pressed a kiss to his forehead, and left. That evening, back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, pulling the throw blanket over my legs. The city hummed faintly outside traffic sirens, laughter drifting from the sidewalk. My phone buzzed. "Silas thought you might want to see this." I tapped the link. Jared appeared glossy and smug behind the wheel of a midnight blue SUV. Caption deserved upgrade. Work hard, reward harder. Another post followed him in a sharp suit, raising a glass outside a sleek Mission District bar. My jaw clenched. That car alone close to $90,000. The cocktails at that bar started at $28 apiece. Jared's smile in the photos was wide, practiced, effortless. I opened my banking app again, not from compulsion this time, but intent. Click, scroll, search. The transfers stretched across the screen, logged with clinical precision. Each bore the same note for parents. Some modest, others large. One stood out $3,200 the same week Dad had been hospitalized last spring. I'd made that transfer after skipping rent. When I asked later about the bill, Mom had said, "Handled thanks to Jared." A slow ache spread in my chest. Not fury, something heavier. Shame. Had I been the scaffolding for someone else's performance all along? Emails blurred past as I searched again. Payment receipts, delivery notes. Jared's name lit up in group chats, always surrounded by praise. Such a good son. So thoughtful. Not once was I mentioned. I navigated to export settings. Clicked download full statement. The cursor spun, then the file appeared. I opened it. Rows of transactions unfurled, years of labor, every gig, every late-night contract rendered into stark numbers. The printer jolted awake as I hit print all, groaning as it spat out sheet after sheet. The stack grew higher, each page carrying the same refrain, "For parents, for parents, for parents." Pages kept sliding from the printer until they fanned across the floor. Half-wrapped boxes and rolls of tape cluttered the counters. Coffee sat cold by the window. The corner lamp glowed faintly over the mess, its tired light spilling across the scattered sheets. I sat cross-legged, bank statements spread in a wide arc. Each shift of my body stirred a rustle, the same 3 words flashing back like a verdict for parents. Dozens of entries, precise and relentless. Month after month, $800, $1,200, $2,000. Some weeks I lived on cereal and cheap coffee, but the payments never failed. I had convinced myself it was duty, that Jared carried his own burdens, that this was love, quiet, invisible love. Now the illusion peeled away, leaving me raw, hollowed, exhausted. Years of weight pressed harder once I finally noticed how much I'd been carrying. Voices surfaced in fragments. "Mom, at Thanksgiving, Jared flew us out to Napa for a weekend. Can you believe how thoughtful he is? At Christmas, he remembered your dad's vitamins. What would we do without him?" Never mind that I had set up the automatic refills. Never mind that those trips were arranged around his work retreats. I pressed both hands against my temples, holding still until the doorbell startled the silence. Without checking, I opened the door. Silas stood there, jacket-zipped, a plain white box balanced in one hand. "You look like a stock market crash," he said, stepping past me. "I feel like one." He raised an eyebrow. "Want to talk?" Not sure what I'd say that you haven't already guessed. He set the box on the coffee table and perched at the edge of the couch. Early graduation gift. Inside the box lay an envelope and a folded note. 2 tickets to the West Coast Tech Innovations Expo. Weeks ago, I'd mentioned it offhand while splitting stale cookies in the break room. I unfolded the note, "For the girl who never gives up." My throat tightened. I blinked hard. He didn't press. Instead, he nodded at the piles of paper. "You've been digging." "All of it," I admitted. "Every cent." I started printing them. "Looks obsessive." "No," he said. "It looks necessary." He reached into his coat and pulled out his phone, handing it over. A screenshot filled the screen email headers from his friend at Golden River Bank. "Your mom's account hasn't received any deposits from Jared in over 18 months. Before that, 2 transfers. Small ones." I stared at the screen. No regular payments, no big chunks. Nothing even close to the story he's been telling. Silas's tone stayed steady, not cruel. "This isn't just about money, it's about rewriting who you are. You've been funding the story while someone else collected the credit." I dropped my gaze to my lap. My palms felt damp. I wiped them against my jeans. I think I just wanted to be enough. "You already are," he said simply. "You've just been standing in the wrong room." The apartment shrank around me, the air thinner, tighter, but my chest still rose. Breathing continued. Existing continued. I stood, walked into the bathroom, and flicked on the light. My reflection blinked back hollow-eyed mascara, smudged but alive. Not broken, not erased. I studied myself with curiosity instead of criticism. What did it mean to be seen? To be remembered not as an afterthought, but as the one who kept the quiet bridges standing behind me. The printer whirred again. Another page slid into the tray. Another line printed in black and white. I stayed at the mirror, letting the hum of the machine fill the space. When I turned back, a fresh sheet waited, my name printed clearly across the top. My hand hovered, then pressed the page flat against the pile. The smooth edge of the page still lingered on my fingertips, then became the linen napkin folded across my lap. Cutlery chimed against porcelain Chianti poured into crystal glasses. Candlelight softened every corner of the room. Columbus Avenue. The family's favorite Italian spot was alive with chatter supposedly for my graduation. Technically, it was my celebration. At the far end of the table, I traced the stem of my wine glass while the noise swelled. Another bottle ordered a cousin waving Uncle Don retelling his Vegas mishap for the 10th time. When the manager dimmed the lights and clapped for quiet faces turned to me, I stood, not eager, not hesitant, just steady. A handful of claps followed, scattered and offbeat. I never wanted the spotlight, and I didn't now. I'm grateful for those who encouraged me. I began voice even. It wasn't an easy road, and I missed a lot of family moments. But this degree, it isn't about titles. It's about endurance. No rehearsed thank yous, no embellishments. I sat back down without waiting for applause. Mom leaned forward, almost instantly, smile stretched too tight to be genuine. If it weren't for Jared helping out all this time, she said sweeping her gaze around our family wouldn't stand as strong. He's been our backbone. Quiet, reliable. Jared gave that practiced shrug, the one that somehow always translated to, "Yes, I know." From the other end, Aunt Claudine set down her fork. "Funny," she said, glancing at me. "Lena's the one who calls me every month, checks on Walter's treatments, sends little care packages." The room shifted, chairs squeaked, eyes darted toward me. "I just assumed Jared handled the family things," Mom replied, tone clipped. "He takes care of the showier parts," Claudine said firmly, "but Lena remembers the things that matter." My eyes lowered to the plate. Candlelight glinted along the rim of the glass beside me, scattering across the cloth in a wavering shimmer. Jared let out a low chuckle. "Lena's brilliant at her work. Nobody denies that. But let's be real when something breaks, when Dad needs medication. When Mom's car dies, I'm the one who gets the midnight call. Those are just facts." A pulse hammered in my ribs. My hand slipped into my bag, not from impulse, but from something anchored. The folder was thick corners bent from handling. I drew it out slowly and rose this time without cue. No need to ask for quiet, no need to demand attention. The folder landed in front of Jared with a muted thud. "This," I said, voice calm and steady, "is a record of every payment I've made for Mom and Dad over the last 2 years. Rent, medication, groceries, hospital bills, even that trip to Monterey." The room froze. Pages slid loose across the linen, my name printed at the top of each. A spoon clattered against porcelain, sharp as a crack in glass. Heads turned toward the sound, but I didn't. My hand closed over the strap of my bag heels, pressing noiselessly into the carpet as I walked away. The folder stayed where it was fanned open, like a confession no one could refold. The door swung open, and a rush of damp night slapped my face sharper than anything said inside. Breath came quick white in the cold. My heels struck against the pavement, echoing along the narrow corridor where one buzzing light stuttered overhead. Shadows bent and stretched across the brick. Fingers tightened on the strap of my bag, not regret, only release. The quiet inside was startling, as though the storm had emptied out and left only stillness. Lena Jared's voice sliced through the air, clipped and urgent. My steps slowed, not stopped, just enough for him to close in, because of course he would. "You had to do that in front of everyone." He snapped, breath fogging. "You couldn't talk to me privately. You wanted to humiliate me that badly." I turned toward him beneath the yellow light. His face was flushed, not from the cold. His jaw locked tight teeth, grinding. "You mean the way I've been erased privately for years? That's not what this is about." "No." I tilted my head. "Then what is it about?" "Where did the money go, Jared?" His eyes slid past me, past the dumpsters, past the alley mouth, searching for a softer truth than the one between us. Silence stretched. My arms crossed on their own. "I had debts," he muttered at last. "Some business investments that didn't work out." Clouded breath hung between us. "So you used the money I sent for Mom and Dad to cover your losses. I didn't use it like that," he said quickly. "I just borrowed against it. I was going to pay it back. I am going to pay it back. Were you?" The question came flat drained, because I checked. "Not one deposit into Mom's account from you in 18 months. A small flinch. Then his hand raked the back of his neck and a bitter laugh escaped. I couldn't tell them. You know how they are. Dad still calls me champ. Mom brags to the neighbors about my success. If they knew I failed, so you let them believe I did nothing, I cut in. You let them thank you with my money." He didn't deny it. And that was the worst part. I didn't think it would go this far, he said, voice smaller now. I just needed time. No, I answered. You were buying a version of yourself that never existed. That struck. He blinked hard eyes, glossy under the half-light. I didn't ask to be their golden boy, he whispered. They made me that before I earned it. I was just trying to live up to it. You think I liked carrying their expectations? You got to disappear. I never did. I didn't disappear, I said. I was dismissed. We stood in the wind tunnel of that alley, breaths rising like steam vanishing before reaching the sky. Jared swiped his sleeve across his face. You've got your degree now, your job. What else do you want from me? One thing I said quietly. Just once I wanted to be seen, not as the one patching holes or cleaning messes, just as myself, not your shadow, not second place. He stayed silent. I wanted Dad to say, she did that. I wanted Mom to admit I mattered, and you took that from me when you kept pretending. The silence pressed so heavy I could hear a car pass 2 blocks away. His gaze dropped to his shoes, then flicked up again, blinking rapidly. I didn't know how to stop it. I thought if I kept it going, I could fix it before anyone noticed. But I noticed I said, and now so does everyone else. A bead of sweat slipped from his temple despite the cold sliding, past his ear vanishing into his collar. Fear, shame, chill, maybe all tangled. No apology came. None expected. My feet carried me toward the rectangle of light spilling from the kitchen door. The brightness inside struck first, too warm, too heavy after the damp alley. Conversations had thinned to nothing. Only the faint clink of a fork against china dared disturb the hush. Faces shifted toward me as I re-entered, some curious others wary. Jared still stood caught between indignation and collapse. The folder remained in the center edges, sharp against the linen, untouched. I didn't ask permission, didn't need to raise my voice. Words came steady, measured. I want to make something clear. From this day on, I'll send money directly. No more through Jared, no more assumptions. I've done my part, and I won't let my work be erased again. A fork touched down softly. A chair creaked as someone adjusted. The air itself recalibrated. My mother blinked slowly, lips parted, but said nothing. Aunt Patrice moved first, her tone sweet, almost rehearsed. Lena, dear, no need to be so confrontational. Families have misunderstandings. Jared's your brother. I gave the smallest nod. Yes, he is. But family doesn't mean silence. And it doesn't mean pretending everything's fine when it's built on deception and favoritism. Jared's mouth opened, ready to interrupt. I lifted a hand palm, steady. This isn't about shame, and it's not revenge. It's truth. You all needed to see what I've been carrying, not because I want applause, but because I refuse to be erased. You made me invisible in my own story. Now I'm stepping back into it. The scrape of a chair broke the air. Silas rose. His voice was quieter than mine, yet somehow cut sharper. Most of you don't know me, he said, eyes sweeping the table. But I've worked beside Lena these past years. I've watched her skip meals, work through the night, take care of everyone else before herself. I've seen her wire money home while living on instant noodles for weeks. That's not duty. That's love, deep, relentless, even when it goes unacknowledged. My gaze fell, not in shame, but to let his words settle. They didn't pierce. They covered me like a shield. My mother's eyes brimmed. She looked toward my father as though seeking rescue. He didn't move. Instead, he placed one hand on the table, his voice so soft everyone leaned in to hear. We failed her. We praised the loudest child and ignored the one who stayed quiet and did the work. I see it now. I see you, Lena. Something shifted in me. Not forgiveness, recognition. And recognition was more than I dared to expect. Jared finally spoke, voice hollow. I never meant to steal your light. Once they started calling me the golden boy, I didn't know how to stop playing the part. Pretending was easier than admitting failure. My eyes stayed on his. Honesty's never easy when lies win applause. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt weighted, reverent. No shouting, no storming out, no tears, just truth hanging heavy in the air. "I'm not asking for a reset," I said at last, "but moving forward I won't pretend anymore just to keep things pleasant. I have boundaries now. You may not like them, but they're not leaving." A beat passed, another. Jared stepped back, shoulders slumping. His eyes fell on the folder as though it might burn him if touched. He didn't deny, didn't deflect. For the first time, he seemed small, not in size, but in the collapse of pretense. The mask had cracked, and there was no energy left to fix it. Silas's fingers brushed against my wrist, a quiet anchor no one else noticed. Air slipped from my lungs, slow and steady. My palms no longer shook. From the corner of my eye, my father's gaze held mine, not a fleeting glance, but steady recognition. He didn't smile, just gave a single nod. Later that afternoon, light slanted through gauzy curtains, scattering faint patterns across the linoleum. Dust hung motionless in the air. At the kitchen table, my mother turned her old Samsung phone in her hands, thumb hovering over the cracked screen like it might shatter further with one wrong press. "Now tap there," I said, pointing gently. "That's the app I installed. See the little green icon." She nodded, then glanced up at me, unsure. "What if I mess something up?" "You won't," I told her. "And even if you do, we can fix it. I'll walk you through every step. Again and again, if that's what it takes." She blinked a few times, then pressed the icon with the tip of her finger. The app loaded slowly, and I leaned in, watching her navigate the login screen. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like she was holding her breath. We sat like that for several minutes, me instructing gently, her following, backtracking, trying again. She entered the password wrong the first time, and her face crumpled in frustration. I reached out and placed my hand on hers, steadying it. "It's okay, Mom. Try again." When she finally logged in, the home screen appeared Balance Recent Transactions, a notification from the bank. She stared at it quietly, as if seeing her own life rendered in numbers for the first time. "I should have learned this a long time ago," she whispered. Her voice was brittle, like something that had been held in for too long. "You're learning now," I replied. "That's what matters." She kept looking at the screen, but her voice turned inward. I thought, if things were quiet, they were fine. If the lights stayed on, if the bills were paid, then it meant nothing was wrong. I didn't interrupt. She set the phone down face up on the table and looked at me. Really looked, not through me or past me. Her mouth moved before her voice did. "I was wrong, Lena. I was so wrong. And for so long." I let myself believe Jared had everything under control because it was easier than asking questions. Easier than believing my daughter was the one holding everything up. I swallowed, unsure whether to speak or let her keep going. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the version of her in my childhood memories had inflated her strength and shrunk her flaws. But now she was just human, tired, aging, trying. "I didn't need you to say that," I murmured. "But thank you for saying it." She exhaled slowly, rubbing her palms together as if warming them. "Will you keep helping me with this?" I nodded. "Of course. I just want to make sure the money actually gets to you and Dad this time, that it doesn't disappear somewhere." She winced slightly but nodded back. "I understand." In the living room, the clock chimed softly. 4 o'clock. There'd been no word from Jared beyond one text the day after the dinner. Just one sentence, "I'll clean up the mess myself. Let me handle it." I didn't know where he'd gone. No one did. My mother had tried calling twice and got voicemail both times, but she hadn't tried a third time. Maybe she knew better than to chase him right now. Maybe she was finally letting things unfold without cushioning them. The sound of the front door creaking caught our attention. My father walked in his shoulders, stiff, holding a worn manila folder tucked under one arm. He gave me a short nod before pulling out a chair across from us. "I want you to look through this," he said, placing the folder on the table. I opened it slowly, revealing papers clipped together, medical bills, insurance statements, receipts for prescriptions, and doctor visits. It was the first time he'd ever brought me into that side of things. The unspoken acknowledgement sent a quiet current through my chest. We sifted through them together. I asked about specific charges, and he responded in numbers, not emotion. That was his way. My mother occasionally filled in with details about new medications or appointments, but mostly we just worked. The three of us around that old table like we were finally sitting in the same boat instead of pretending the river was calm. Nobody mentioned Jared. Nobody mentioned the folder from the dinner. But something had shifted. The silence no longer screamed. We didn't laugh. We didn't cry. But I felt something loosen. I lingered by the desk, the lamp's amber glow trembling with each draft from the window. My hand brushed the edge of the shade rough under my fingertips before I pulled the door to behind me. The scent of damp earth greeted me when I stepped outside, barefoot coffee warming my palms. Dew still clung to the orange tree leaves, the garden narrow but stubborn edges lined with uneven bricks. A garbage truck groaned somewhere downhill, wind chimes knocked together, and the mist hovered low against the fence. A week earlier, a friend from Pittsburgh messaged me out of nowhere. "You won't believe who just walked into my shop with oil-stained boots and a clipboard." It was Jared. Apparently he'd started working at a local garage, small place, not fancy, but honest. He clocked in at 6 a.m., swept floors, learned how to replace alternators. He didn't say much, my friend said, just did his job. Quiet, tired-looking, but solid. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the message for a long time. A few days later, Mom forwarded a screenshot of a transfer from Jared $300. This time it didn't come with a caption about how amazing her son was. No mention on Facebook, no phone call to announce it. Just a deposit, clean, earned, enough. That felt like progress. Silas was still asleep when I came back inside. His hair stuck up in 6 directions, face buried halfway into my pillow. We never had a wedding, not the kind with centerpieces and hashtags. We'd quietly merged our lives, his toothbrush next to mine, my books spilling onto his side of the bed, a shared grocery list with bad handwriting from both of us. Some nights we stayed up late debugging code. Other nights we argued about plant placement or who forgot to buy almond milk again. But in the mornings we drank our coffee side by side. No declarations, just rhythm. Mom video called twice a month now, always with the same opener, "Are you eating enough?" Then she'd squint at the screen and scold me for having dark circles. Go to bed early, put the laptop down sometimes. I'd nod, smile, tell her I was taking care of myself. She never apologized outright for the past, and I didn't expect her to. But every call, every question, every awkward attempt to connect it was her way of showing up, her language of repair. On my last visit home, Dad sat beside me on the porch, watching the wind shuffle the bare branches of the maple tree he'd planted when I was born. He didn't speak for a long time, just rocked in the creaky chair like he was listening for something. Then, without turning his head, he said, "I never had the words like Jared, but I saw you. Long before any of this. I always saw you." I didn't answer. I couldn't have, even if I tried. My throat had closed up and my hands were clenched under the throw blanket. But when he stood and went back inside, I stayed. And the smile I had didn't fade for a long time. Later that week, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing an email not to anyone else, just to myself. I hadn't done that in years. It wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to exist, to be written, to be seen by the only person who needed it. The subject line was blank. The body read, "If you're reading this and you've ever felt like a shadow, like the one who gets forgotten, the one who tries quietly and watches others get the credit, I want you to know something. Light doesn't always come from being noticed. Sometimes light comes from choosing to stand still when you want to run, from choosing to speak when your voice trembles, from continuing even when no one claps. Sometimes light comes from lighting the match yourself and believing with or without witnesses that what you're doing matters. I read it over once, didn't edit it, didn't reread, just hit save as draft and closed the tab. Outside, the orange tree swayed in the breeze. Its leaves glinted, and I could almost smell the blossoms that hadn't bloomed yet. Not yet, but they would. Sometimes the hardest part isn't proving someone wrong, it's choosing not to let their version of you define who you become. I used to think being seen meant being praised, being chosen, being loud enough to rise above the noise. Now I know being seen starts from within. What about you? Have you ever stood in the shadows waiting for someone to notice? Or did you decide to build your own light? If this story moved something in you, follow the channel and stay with us. There's more to come.